You've seen it a million times in the movies, right? The dusty manila folder, stamped top secret, pulled from some high-tech vault. Inside, there's a single piece of paper that changes everything. But what if the real story of government secrets isn't about one explosive document, but about the thousands and thousands of pages that surround it? So, what's actually going on here? Forget the Hollywood fantasy of a single smoking gun. In this explainer, we're going to peel back the cover and look at the real anatomy of a secret file. The messy, bureaucratic, and honestly fascinating reality of how information is gathered, hidden, and eventually fought over. And these two documents? They show you exactly what I'm talking about. On the left, you've got a page from Malcolm X's FBI file, just almost completely blacked out. On the right, a page from the JFK files. It's full of dense, bureaucratic text. This right here is the central puzzle. The promise of some hidden truth versus the often frustrating reality of what we're actually allowed to see. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to break down the life cycle of a government secret into 5 stages: how a file gets started, how it gets filled, how it's managed, the huge battle to get it released, and finally, what these secrets really tell us about how power works. All right, first up, opening the file. How does a secret investigation even get started? Well, you might be surprised to learn that the spark for a top secret file often isn't some shady backroom deal, but something that happens right out in the open. Just take a look at this justification memo from the FBI. They wanted to start surveilling the gangster Bugsy Siegel. And the reason they gave? It wasn't some hidden conspiracy. Nope, it was his far-flung interests in constant travel status. His very public business dealings were the trigger, the official rationale they needed to open a file and get the whole surveillance machine rolling. And here's a perfect example of exactly that. What you're looking at is a newspaper clipping from the FBI's file on Malcolm X. It's reporting on his very public split from the Nation of Islam. Think about that. An article that anyone could read gets clipped, put in a folder, and bam, it's now the first building block of a secret government record. Okay, so the file's open. Now what? How do they actually fill it up? This is where we get into the tools of the trade. And spoiler alert, it's less about cool spy gadgets and way more about the meticulous and sometimes ruthless management of paperwork. And this memo, wow, this reveals a really crucial part of the process. One of the first things you do to shape a secret is to control the paper trail. This memo from 1964 lists specific serial numbers from Malcolm X's file, and the instruction is chillingly simple: to be destroyed. A secret isn't just about what's in the file, it's also about what's been deliberately taken out. Forever. So the whole process really builds from there. First, they're monitoring public stuff, like that newspaper clipping we just saw. Second, comes the active surveillance. We're talking wiretaps, informants, that sort of thing. And third, and this is really the engine of the whole system, they generate this mountain of internal memos, just analyzing, summarizing, and justifying everything they're doing. It's a bureaucracy that runs on information. All right, let's move on. Now we're going to look at how these massive files are actually managed inside the government bureaucracy, because this is where the real rules of the secrecy game are written. Okay, get ready for this number. 499,000. 499,000. That's how many pages the FBI had in just its 4 main files on the JFK assassination. I mean, the sheer scale of it is just staggering. This isn't just a pile of secrets, it's a monumental information management problem, all governed by these complex and often self-protecting rules. So, if you want to understand all of this secrecy, you have to know this one key phrase: sources and methods. It's the bedrock of everything. Basically, agencies like the CIA are legally required to protect their sources, the people giving them information, and their methods, the techniques they use to get it. This is the number one justification for pretty much every single blacked out line you'll ever see. Now, while the big official reason for secrecy is always national security, right?
The actual practical reasons are often, well, a lot more boring. A page might be blacked out just because of the Privacy Act, which protects the names of regular citizens. Or maybe it's because one agency can't release a file that another agency technically owns. So the bureaucracy itself creates these roadblocks that have nothing to do with the actual secrets inside. But eventually, this secret world has to collide with the public one. And that brings us to the climax of our story, the battle to get these files released, to drag them kicking and screaming out into the daylight. And you really can't find a better case study for this than the JFK files. I mean, look at this timeline. For decades, it was just this long struggle between official reports and all this public doubt. But check out what happens at the end. It wasn't another investigation that blew the lid off. It was a Hollywood movie. That movie created such a huge public outcry that Congress literally had no choice but to act. And get this, in what is a pretty stunning admission, the CIA director at the time, Robert Gates, basically confirmed it. He said it was the public's concern that their government had in some way been involved, a concern fired up by the movie that made it imperative to release the documents. That's an incredibly rare moment where you see the direct line between public perception and government transparency. But even when Congress passes a law, the release is never, ever total. This chart tells the story. In one review, yeah, over 200,000 pages got released, but look, 12,000 pages were still held back. Declassification isn't like flipping a light switch. It's this long, drawn-out negotiation, with agencies always fighting to keep some things under wraps. So that brings us to our final question, the resolution. After all the fighting, after the files are finally cracked open, what do we actually learn? What do these secrets really tell us? Well, here's the big reveal. There usually is no big reveal. There's rarely a single smoking gun. What you get instead is this sprawling, messy, and deeply human picture of how government actually works. It's full of dead ends, competing theories, and just mountains of paperwork that show you how an institution thinks. And honestly, this single piece of paper illustrates that perfectly. Sometimes the most revealing document in a secret file is a form letter, a boring bureaucratic sheet that just tells you all the stuff you're not allowed to see. It shows you that the real story isn't just about what happened. It's about the very deliberate, methodical process of deciding which parts of history we get to know and which parts we don't. And that leaves us with one final big question. After seeing all this, the redacted pages, the destroyed memos, the bureaucratic runaround, does pulling back the curtain actually build public trust? Or does it just make you wonder what else is still locked away?